Welcome back to the Snap Count on the Big Play Sports Network, presented by FanDuel. I'm your host, Trai, and this is my quarterback and yours, Mr. Charlie Batch. Sir, I'm not even going to ask you how you're doing because I know exactly how you're doing. All that snow that fell down. Look, I would rather have snow. Everybody's dealing with the weather right now, right? I would rather have snow, the snow that you had, versus the ice that I had. I don't know if you saw this video I added to the group, but the ice that encased my truck yesterday, it was like a frozen tomb. And you see, went to the back door, tried to open it. It wasn't fun, Charlie. I thought I was going to take my door off the hinges right there while you over there in your, what, how many inches of snow did you guys get?
We probably got about 15 inches up here.
There's nobody that loves the snow more than you do, and I don't quite get it. Every year you're looking forward to using that beast of a machine that you got. Look at you sitting next to
Let,
that
I'm gonna give you
monster.
the backstory to this, Trey.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
probably
let me
about
know this.
10 years or so ago, you know how you hire a company to come out, and regardless if it's 1 inch, it could be 8 inch, they're charging you the same price. So I
Mhm.
got frustrated because the bill kept adding up. It didn't snow as much, and we probably got no more than maybe 2 inches at a time. So the following year, I said, you want to know what? I'm gonna do this myself. And lo and behold, it probably snowed the most over the last 5 years that it ever snowed. So my back
Uh-huh.
was hurting. So of course, men, we have our egos. And
Yes, we do.
Tasha went out and she found this monster of a machine. This is my snowblower from
Yeah.
Craftsman, and she found it on sale. And she said, "Man, this is going to be fantastic." So she ended up picking it up for me. And over the next couple years, it never snowed enough for me to use it all like I would like to use it. And
Uh-huh.
so whenever we do get that, that day of snow, whether that's 5, 6, 10 inches, I get excited because not only do I do my driveway, I do my neighbor's driveway. So they get excited as well. And I'll do that all the way up until really I run out of gas. So I'll have one tank, maybe a tank and a half, depending on the gas that I have at home. But I just get excited about it. And so, of course, I'm watching and I feel like I'm a meteorologist, right? I'm out there, I see the trend, the snow is happening, and I'm just like a little kid on Christmas as I'm sipping my tea. I'm waiting when the right time to go out to do this. But lo and behold, the snow didn't end really up here, or at least let off until about 7 p.m. And that's when I went out right around 8 o'clock last night, did my driveway. And of course, I was up bright and early this morning, knocking out and helping out some neighbors here today. So that snowblower, it got its money's worth over the last day and a half.
I had one of those when I was in Indy. I had a Toro. No, you had a Craftsman. But I saw the build up. CB, you was hype about this snow that was falling down, sipping your tea and whatnot. So that was pretty cool, man. I mean, I know a lot of folks are dealing with this snow and this weather. I was stuck in the house, and because of that, the news of the next head coach of the Steelers came through. The Steelers have hired Mike McCarthy. Whew, we got a lot to talk about. Let's get over to these Steel City headlines. Steel City headlines are brought to you by Smart Choice Bass. It's the perfect time to remodel your bathroom. Right now, Smart Choice Bass is giving you $1,250 off your bathroom projects, plus a free luxury upgrade to add comfort and style. And just for Big Play listeners, you'll save an additional 10% on your project. So don't wait. Visit them at smartchoicebass.com or give them a call at 844-GET-SMART to schedule your free consultation today. Smart Choice Bass, where luxury meets affordability. Only the fourth coach since 1969 has been hired for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mike McCarthy of the Dallas Cowboys and previously before that the Green Bay Packers has accepted the job. And Mr. Rooney sat down with one of the Steelers reporters, and this is what he had to say. We decided to bring Mike on because we believe that he's the right coach for us at this point to help lead us to championships. Hold on. He also said he is someone who has a longer track record than many of the other candidates and a winning track record. He's been a winner everywhere he's been, probably just as important for our purposes. The quarterbacks that he's worked with have all been very successful. So he has a proven track record of developing top flight quarterbacks. Those are the things that maybe stick out the most. CB, I'm going to let you go first. What was your initial reaction? Well, first, what do you think about what Mr. Rooney said? And then what was your initial reaction when the hiring came through?
Yeah, when I'm listening to the soundbite from Mr. Rooney, that lets me know, hey, he's looking to develop the next young quarterback. And to me, it sounds like he is confident in Will Howard. So whatever went on in that interview, as it relates to just the ability to develop quarterbacks, he was excited about. So again, that's one sense of where we are with this. My reaction at the beginning, as you say, it's a great hire because I know what Mike McCarthy's track record is. I know what he did up in Green Bay, and obviously followed him throughout the course of his career. He's a Pittsburgh guy. I'm a definitely root for this guy. The only downside to this for me, and I think a lot of people may feel some type way about it, and maybe it plays into why the reaction is what it is the fact that they don't have a coach that they know is going to be around the next 10 to 15 years. This
Mhm.
is it's a stopgap. But again, if he goes out there and accomplishes what everybody hopes that he can, which is hoisting another Lombardi trophy, I don't think nobody will complain about the decision. But I think where he is, he wanted the job, he put everything else on hold, and just to get back to this particular point. Now we're speaking about him developing Will Howard, and we don't even know if Aaron Rodgers is going to come back. Even before last season, Aaron Rodgers said, "Hey, I would love to help the young guys out. I would love to now be able to pass the torch." And that was
Mhm.
prior to the season starting last year. So, for whatever reason, Aaron does come back and you build the relationship, you still at some point is going to have to see enough of Will Howard to prove that he can be the guy if he had to step in next season in 2026, but ultimately be the guy in 2027. So, this is all things that are in the work. When you look at just his track record in developing quarterbacks, the guy knows what he is going to do. I get excited about the fact of we are going to see a completely different offense than what we have over the last 5 years. That's what I get excited about. And the reason why is because I was in this West Coast system my last year in Detroit. A lot of verbiage, but they moved the ball down the field. A lot of shifts, motions, and creating mismatches. So this is going to be something I'm looking forward to. So it's going to be a lot of work for these guys as they now have to learn his new offense. And I get excited about that.
CB, I'm glad you positive because my feelings have changed dramatically in the last 48 hours. Not gonna lie. When it first came across the ticker and I heard it, I was not excited. It felt like, in general, my sense is I don't want to hire somebody that's been fired recently and that's been a year off from the job. That was my initial reaction. I thought about everything bad and worse about this hire. Oh, he's an older coach, so he's not going to be around for a while like our previous coaches were. Um, he also had a losing record the last time he coached in Dallas, and you saw how that tenure went down. Despite the fact that he was 12-5 for 3 of the 5 seasons and won the division a couple of times, he didn't have a lot of playoff success, and so those were my initial reactions. I'm glad we do this show when we did it. It was 48 hours, and now I feel completely different. Even listening to how you're talking about it has shifted my thinking a little bit. It makes sense that you bring in a Mike McCarthy with his track record with quarterbacks, specifically with young quarterbacks. What he did with A-Rod when he was young, his first year as a starter was under Mike McCarthy, even though he got drafted 3 years prior. He worked with Joe Montana. He's worked with some of the best quarterbacks that have ever played the game, right? And he has a brilliant offensive mind. And I think more than anything, he develops coaches. And that's one of the things that we had a knock on Coach Tomlin about. And so who knows, the next young coach that's going to be here for 30 years might be the OC or DC that Mike McCarthy hires and eventually develops to take over the role. And so, yeah, it's been a shifting dynamic for me. But as I'm standing here thinking about it right now, listening to you even talk about all the things he's talking about, the West Coast offense, your familiarity with that offense and what it brings to a very stagnant offense that the Steelers have had the last 5, 6 years, it's exciting to think about that. I know everybody wants to see what Will Howard can do. And for him to be excited about working with Will Howard, who knows? We might have a steal in a quarterback. And he's an older quarterback too. So he has experience. Now he's working with a 20 or 21. I think Will Howard's like what, 24, 25 years old. And so he had that year on the A-Rod too. So it's a good situation offensively. I do worry about the defensive side of the ball. That's one of the places that we have struggled. And he has not, in general, had great defenses. So I'm very interested in see who he brings on as a DC. But as it stands right now, I'm warming up. I'm warming up to Mike McCarthy being there. He's a Pittsburgh guy. I know you're a Pittsburgh guy, so y'all stick together. Y'all Yinzers. I'm a honorary Yinzer, I would like to say. But yeah, it's it's an interesting hire, and but I'm looking forward to seeing what he does once again in the building.
Well, I'm glad you flipped, and here's why I'm glad you flipped, because the longer you're in the NFL, at some point, somebody will fire you, and
Yeah.
we're all gonna be kinda on your next wave and next chapter of your life, and if you're an active player, that happens because there's a strong chance when the team that you start with, you don't finish with, and that's just the way that it is throughout the NFL as a player. But as coaches, there's a matter of when they're coaching, people are always gonna say, "It's not a matter of if you get fired, it's just a matter of when." Because that's just the nature of what coaching is. So when you are going in multiple places, that is something. Just because you're a cast off in one doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a cast off in the other, right? When you look at just McCarthy going from Green Bay, won a Super Bowl, you go to Dallas, you lose there, and then you get fired and move on. Well, there's a lot of people in Dallas. They haven't won a Super Bowl in over 30 years. So again, that is something that's going to continuously happen. And that's why I just look back in the right place. He's home. Yes, there's some work to do on this roster, but again, he is inheriting a division winner. So when you have that and now figuring out the pieces to put in place, listen, you need to now be able to score offensively. And we haven't been able to do that. And that's something that when I get excited about all the pieces that could potentially happen, when you're looking at the roster right now in that quarterback room, you do have Will Howard and Mason Rudolph on a roster. Here's where I get excited about as well. Yes, Aaron Rodgers, if he comes back, that's not a bad idea. This guy, when he, even though we lost the playoff game, he was 24 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. That is a
Mhm.
3-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, minus the pieces that we've been talking about all season in that receiver group. So now, if he's able to now elevate, you make some pieces in the receiver room, and then also there's that peaceful transition, right? And I say that because as a young guy, he had to have the torch passed by Brett Favre to him.
Mhm.
He passed the torch to Jordan Love. And then ultimately now here he is now with the chance to pass that torch to Will Howard, somebody who we built a relationship with last year. It's not truly a threat because you understand why you are potentially coming back for one season and passing it off to Will. So now Will gets an opportunity to now learn from Aaron Rodgers all of next year. Who knows if we need him or not? But again, he has to play. So if Aaron does come back, this is a guy in OTAs and pre and training camp is going to get a lot of time in preseason games. He just got hurt at the wrong time, which was right before the game started. So he didn't get a chance to evaluate Will Howard. If Will Howard played in those games, maybe we're not even talking about Aaron Rodgers at this particular point. But the difference is he didn't play. That's why Aaron is able to come back. And if he comes back, you understand what role you are bringing and your job responsibilities when it comes to that quarterback room. So I'm not shook one way or another with this. I get excited about it because I look at the glass half full versus the glass half empty.
I'm an optimist too. I'm glad you are as well. But I did have my concerns initially, but talking to you, you're talking me off the ledge. I appreciate that. And I did wonder if A-Rod played a part in the decision to bring in Mike McCarthy. And I'm gonna read you a quote from Mr. Rooney in that interview. We decided to bring on Mike on because we believe that he's the right coach for us at this point to help lead us to a championship. We don't know what Aaron's plans are right now, and that did not weigh heavily in this decision. We'll see where Aaron is, and we've left the door open, but obviously we all have to sit down and see what makes sense. So that'll happen sometime in the next month or so, but a decision has been made based on Mike being the coach we want, and it really had very little to do with whether Aaron is going to be back or not. Do you believe that? You believe, Mr.
I do
Rooney?
believe that. No, I
Okay.
do believe that. And as I'm looking down and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm looking at the league calendar year, which is March 11th. That's what I was looking down to find out the date. I do believe that because yes, you can configure the roster right now. People, they tune into the combine, but they don't realize that evaluation process that's happening right now with these collegiate
Mhm.
all star games that are happening. So you're evaluating talent, but for those scouts, it's a little bit of a challenge right now because you're trying to identify players and you have no idea what system you're running. So that is a challenge when you're evaluating. You're now looking at instincts. Can a guy play? Can he not? But you can't answer the question on whether he fits into your system. And that won't happen until you get closer to the combine. So this whole evaluation process is happening from the scouts. But then also you have Mike McCarthy trying to build a coaching staff to figure out which coaches are going to be there, the ones that he identified, Are they under contract? Are they will they be granted permission to speak to the Steelers to now be able to bring on board from a coaching staff perspective? So a lot of questions are happening from that manner. But ultimately, when you now get to this particular point, we don't know. He has to build with what's on the roster right now. Because if I'm Aaron, I'm looking at Mike and I'm saying, listen, great. I would love to come back, but what moves are you making in anticipation to the draft in April and also preparing for the 2026 season? There are some questions that need to be answered, and those are going to be hard conversations on the back end to see if they can fill that void to now maybe get Aaron excited to come back to this team. Or you say we now strengthen everyone else around him and now go with the young guy with Will Howard. So again, a lot of questions need to be answered before we get to that March 11th calendar date when you can now start the league calendar year.
But to shift gears a little bit, I want to ask you a football question in regards to Mike McCarthy, who has traditionally been the play caller. I know with his last years in Dallas, Kellen Moore ended up taking over and calling plays. As a quarterback, what is your preference? Do you like your head coach being the play caller? Do you want an OC to be a play caller specifically, or does it matter?
Well, I did have it both ways, and I've only had it 1 year in my career where the head coach was actually the offensive coordinator, and that was in Detroit, man, in 2001, learning that offensive West Coast system. And uh, Marty Morningweg was the coach during that time.
Mhm,
He was one heck of an offensive coordinator. But when you now take the coordinator hat off and go back to head coaching mode, that's where he struggled with. So
mhm.
again, it's not a problem because now you're aligned with your offensive coordinator, regardless if he is the head coach or not. You understand what he's thinking and why he's calling certain plays. So that actually can be that you can benefit from that if you're a quarterback.
Okay. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I wonder who he's going to bring in. And I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was almost a foregone conclusion that Chris Shula was going to be the next head coach, and that he was going to bring on Nate Shieldhouse, I think, the quarterback coach in LA right now. Obviously, they lost their game yesterday, and I thought this was going to be the week where we hired the man. So it was a surprise when we talked about the coaches briefly last week. I don't think we even brought up Mike McCarthy. I think we brought up Anthony Weaver and Brian Flores and Chris Shula. So totally surprised, but not shocked, I guess you could say, because he is a Pittsburgh guy and his name was thrown around out there. But in general, do you think this was the best option for the Steelers, or do you think they should have waited to see what Shula brought to the
Yeah,
table?
I would have liked to see them wait, but only but then you're starting to lose time, right? Because now you're
Mm.
essentially you started a week later, but you're putting all your eggs into one basket. Are you able to get one of those two? And if so, maybe that price tag goes up because there's other organizations who are competing for these guys as well. So it's a benefit for them the longer they wait because obviously their price tag is going up. But I think when you look back at Mike McCarthy, you look back, this is a comfort hire. And I say that because Omar and general manager Andy Weidel, they work with Mike McCarthy in New Orleans, and that dates back
Mhm.
all the way to 2000. So when you have that relationship with him, you know what you're getting. The resume speaks for itself. So it's easy transition whenever you now are having conversations and you know somebody, it's a lot easier to work with from that particular manner. And obviously, something in that interview process that happened made Omar, made Mr. Rooney, and made those guys who are all involved in that process, it made them comfortable because it wasn't like he was selling on what he was bringing to the team. It's about what they currently have and how they or and he can actually elevate to play within the quarterback position. And I think that ultimately sold whoever was part of this process.
Regardless, our coach is here. Mike McCarthy is the new head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he's taking over a team with some holes. And it's going to be interesting what this all season brings, because the Steelers do know how to bring drama to the table. I tell you, every single offseason it is not boring at all. And this offseason is going to be a new era for Pittsburgh Steelers and Pittsburgh football. And Combine's coming up here at the end of the month or end of next month, and then the draft in Pittsburgh shortly thereafter. So things are exciting, and we got some holes to fill in this team. And me and you, we graded this the team by position instead of the trench report. let's get to these positional grades at the end of the break.
The Big Play Sports Network is brought to you by Garage Beer. No bitterness, no frills, no IPA, just beer-flavored beer. Find local retailers who sell garage beer near you by visiting drinkgaragebeer.com.
Well, CB, we decided to expand the trench report this week. We got our coach, and he's about to take over a team that has some talent and some good foundation, but definitely some holes to fill. And I think the most important position, obviously, and it has been for the last 5 years for the Steelers, is the quarterback position. So we'll start there. Um, Obviously, A-Rod was the quarterback this year. He missed one game due to injury against the Bears he missed, and Mason
Yes.
started in this place. Um, how do you think, when it's all said and done, he performed this year? What grade would you give
I
him?
I would give him an A minus, to be honest with you. You know, we started out slow with him there. He missed a lot of the offseason time, showed up really essentially the last week of OTAs and the first week of training camp. But when you look back just on the course of the season, started out a little bit rocky, had 2 interceptions against New England, one against the Patriots. But then he goes a couple weeks, and once he got hot, he got hot. He threw an
Mhm.
interception against the Chargers, and he went the next 7 weeks without throwing an interception. And he was the reason why this offense essentially was able to stay on the field and control that time of possession and give that defense a rest. He was the main reason why this offense went. And that's why I give him an A minus because of what he was able to do with the lack of people that he had around him.
Yeah, you were quarterback, so you were a little bit nicer to him than I was. I think he performed well, and I think he's exactly what this team needed at this juncture. But there were some down moments, especially this last playoff game and um, the game versus Buffalo. I think were some of his worst games, and so I gave him a B. And I think um, he played winning football by and large for the most part, but there were some dips there. I didn't question his arm strength looked live. He didn't look like he lost anything as far as throwing the ball, as accurate as he was. And yes, you do got to take into account the lack of talent at wide receiver, at least consistently, and not really having a true number two. So I see why you gave him an A minus. I was a little tougher, gave him a B. Thought he played well, but not great. Um, Moving on to running backs. Now, this is a position group that I thought coming in would be our strength. I was really high on Jalen Warren. Didn't know about Gainwell. Didn't realize how good of an addition he would be to the point where he became our team MVP. So I had to be nice to that position, but I also thought they performed well when given the opportunity. I thought they were the most dangerous offensive weapons we had, so I gave them a B plus. What say you?
Yeah, going into it, like, Jalen Warren was supposed to be the front runner, and he was in pole position and wasn't able to get through some of those holes essentially that he was able to do years before. And Gainwell, a pleasant surprise. I was aware of him in Philadelphia. You see some of those splash plays, but man, when you watch him on an everyday basis since training camp, man, this guy elevated that room. And nobody really gave him much of an opportunity because people got excited about Caleb Johnson. Okay, this is going to be the young guy. Maybe he would take over the number two position. That didn't happen. Gainwell went out there and did his part. And I just love the 1-2 punch. Ultimately, I think I gave the running back group a B plus, and I'm what you
Mhm.
want because of the play of those first two guys. And ultimately, they were able to carry the torch. Jalen missed some games early, and Gainwell was able to step in and be able to deliver. Hopefully, they were able to re-sign Gaineswell because he brings a lot of volume to that room.
Yeah, really surprised with what Gainwell brought, but a pleasant surprise, and he definitely earned his paycheck this offseason. So he's not going to be coming at the hometown discount this year. My man needs to get paid a little bit. A-Rod said as much. So moving on, the O-line. This was a group that, obviously I graded all year long, very familiar with how they improved from the beginning of the year to the end. And as a group, I gave them a B plus. I thought Pat Meyer did a fantastic job with a whole bunch of young guys who don't have a lot of experience outside of Isaac Siamalu. Had to navigate that left tackle position. 4 different guys played left tackle this year due to injury. And so he ended up with Dylan Cook, who played some of the best that position has seen for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So this is my group, a little biased, but I am fair when I give him a B plus. I think I gave 87 was the number I gave him last week, and our grading scales, 87 is a B plus. So
No, I'm with you on it. As the offensive line was going on, and obviously the depth was challenged a little bit throughout the course of the season, and mainly at that left tackle. And those guys were able to step up and play. And I just didn't see enough to elevate it to say I need, B plus, A minus to me, but they were a solid B based off the way they all played together, and that was winning football, and they were able to deliver. And that was a group that really was a when you look at the beginning of the season, everybody looked at it and said it was a weakness, but by the end of the season, they were right there in the middle of the pack, if not right up in that upper echelon there. So I think they did a nice job, and ultimately, I just gave them a B. You're a little bit more generous than I am.
You got to add the plus, man. It's my O line. I got to give him a little bit more.
I'm with that.
You
Hey,
gotta,
you're the expert in this. That's why you see it, and I gotta fall back.
the moving on. This was probably the most disappointing position group on the entire team. And we have it combined wide receiver, tight end. I gave them separate grades, and as you see right there, I was harder on the wide receivers. I gave him a D minus. I would have gave him a felon grade if it wasn't for some of the big plays that DK made, but DK didn't give us what his contract dictated. A lot of that is due to the offense. A lot of that was due to the O line taking some time to grow, and Aaron Rodgers trusting his O line enough to the point where he can hold on to the ball and get the ball downfield. All that plays a part, but nobody stepped up and became a second wide receiver. We had to really dig the bottom of the barrel of wide receivers and take guys off the street like MBS and Adam Thielen, who was literally on his last leg before he retired. And they ended up being more involved in the guys that we went through training camp with. Roman Wilson was a no-show for the majority of the season. Calvin Austin had a down year after I thought he was going to break out after having some big games last year. Thought this was his year to break out. Didn't happen. And then Scotty Miller, we only saw him a little bit. Ben Skoranek, his main role is a special teamer. So that room was very disappointing. Meanwhile, the tight ends, we kept 4 of them. And I would have gave this grade a B because of the work that Connor Hayward did and what Darnell Washington was able to do. But the fact that we didn't use Pat Fryermuth like I wanted us to, or he wanted to be used, and consistently used Janu for we signed him, paid him decent tight end money, or traded for him and paying him decent money, and we didn't get a lot out of him at all. He ended up being more of a detriment to that position group, that I think, more than anything. And so, yeah, you see right there, D minus for the wide receivers and a C plus for the tight ends.
Yeah, I'm very similar as far as where you're at with it. I mean, this was a disappointing group when you look back overall, receiver wise, and when you look back, everything that was they were hoping for in the number 2 position, they gave Roman Wilson every opportunity to run with it. He didn't. Calvin Austin was elevated into that particular role, and then they were trying to figure out who the third was going to be. And ultimately, Ben Skoranek stepped up early in the season, which did a very good job because not much was expected of him. We know what he is as special teams player, but as a receiver, he was able to come in, caught a big touchdown catch against the Jets in the first week of the season. So these are things that you just look back and you question and scratch your head to say, what were they thinking as they were heading into this season? And it just lets me know when you are a top draft pick, they're going to give you every opportunity to shine. And that's exactly what they did with Roman Wilson, because he actually was just a redshirt freshman because he missed majority of last year with an injury. So I
Mhm.
understand the expedited learning curve that they were trying to give him, but whenever you realize it's going to fail, you got to move on quickly. And you
Mhm.
can't allow the offense to get in there. They took a little longer to now elevate whoever the next guy was going to be. Calvin Austin was there, missed some time back and forth. Overall, that group just right now, it needs to overhaul to figure out what they're going to do. I gave them a C minus. When it comes to the tight end, I gave him a C only because we didn't expect Darnell Washington to be elevated in the manner that he was. He had a fantastic year. Unfortunately, at the end of the season, he went out with an injury. But again, to your point, Trey, questioning what happened with Pat Fryermuth. Why did he get into the doghouse? We never got that answer. But when he was on the field, he was able to shine and make big plays. And obviously, John Smith, a lot was expected. There was talk about him being a number 2 receiver, and ultimately he fell out of grace because he did not put the numbers up and what everybody expected. Maybe he, unsure if he's going to be back or not, but this guy has a huge amount of talent with Johnu. Maybe he's able to elevate in a system and Mike McCarthy. So again, yes, down season for a lot of them as a group, but there is some potential based off the offense that they'll be getting into.
Yeah, and this is a group that Mike McCarthy was brought in to fix. Offense has been anemic to say the least, and that's being nice. The last 5, 6 years since Ben retired, and so
And think
this is
about
what.
this when you look back and think about whenever A Rod was talking about the tight end group and talking about Darnell Washington, why he was playing, the
Mhm,
person he always kind of referred him for back to was Mercedes Lewis and said, "Man, that guy reminds me of that guy in
mhm,
Green Bay."
mhm.
Okay, now you have a Green Bay guy here. Can Darnell Washington maybe take that next step in John New, Pat Fryermuth into a tight end friendly offense in this manner?
Yeah, and I'm hoping they do. I hope Mike McCarthy comes in, and we still don't know if he's going to be the main constructor of the offense or if he's going to bring somebody that's like-minded at OC and it be his offense. That's yet to be known, but this is the reason why he came in for this offense. Now, we're going to talk about this defense, and it's going to be interesting because he's not known as a defensive coach, but Steelers are a city that gets behind their defense. We're known for our defense. So we want the offense to improve, but I still think we want our identity to be where the strength of our team is our defense. And so after this break, we'll tell you the positional grades for the defense, but it's going to be interesting who Mike McCarthy hires at DC. Now, this is the most disappointing, I think, grades when you consider what Coach Tomlin said in training camp in regards to this defense. They had, in his eyes, the makings of a historical defense. Well, we were historical, all right, in all the worst ways, not in the good ways. Giving up more rushing yards than anybody has ever given up in our home stadium in Pittsburgh. I still call it Heinz Field. It's Acrisure Stadium. I get it. Um, yeah, defense got manhandle. And for them to be the highest paid defense in the league, we expected a lot out of them. These grades show up as much that they didn't come through. And so, starting with the defensive line, man, they picked up and they had their moments where they shined, but it was such an inconsistent group. Cam Hayward, he was the best defensive tackle in the league, but it wasn't enough. Inconsistent from Keanu Benton. Did not have Derek Harmon on the field uh, for large portions of the season due to injury. When he was in, he was effective. Keanu Benton improved as the year went on. So the defensive line did get better as the year progressed, but they had some really bad moments, especially that 3-game run was Chicago, Buffalo, and I forget who the third team was when they ran for 200 yards plus on us. So defensive line, I gave them a grade. What did I give them? I gave them a B minus, in large part due to Cam Hayward. If it wasn't for Cam Hayward, that group would probably be like a C minus or a D plus. But they were disappointing a little bit, but they picked it up in large portions of the year and showed that they could be dominant when they were all on the same page. But by and large, I still think disappointing for what we expected and what they expected of themselves.
Yeah, I'm with you on it, and everything that we were expecting heading into the season was mainly going to be what that defensive line consisted of. And like you mentioned, with Coach Tomlin talking about this offense being historic, a good friend of ours, Jerry Dulac from the Post Gazette, said they were more prehistoric this season. So I think
Yeah.
ultimately, when you see it, it was reflective of the numbers and ultimately defensive line. I gave him a B. And the reason
Mhm.
why I gave him a B was because of the production from Cam Hayward. This guy actually, to me, was Pro Bowl caliber. He should have been there and or All Pro
Yeah.
caliber. And I think ultimately he elevated. He got stronger as the year went on. So it was a good sign to see him being able to do so as the wily vet, and
Mhm.
now taking all those young guys under his belt. We still need to see a lot more production from Derek Harmon. Yes, he was the rookie of the year, but hey, we got to make sure injury doesn't occur, and hopefully he can be dominant in the manner that he flashed throughout the course of the season. So I'm excited about where his development process is at. But Keanu Benton, yes, we need to see more from him as he is elevating and ultimately being able to be part of that rotation. So The future is bright there. It just
Yeah,
wasn't what we needed to see this season.
I agree. And not to mention YA Black and the unexpected production that he provided, um, I thought was exceptional. And so there is some young talent there. The scheme we're going to be in, we don't know. We don't know. They're going to be more of a penetrating upfield defense, which would seem to benefit a Keanu Benton, or are we going to stay in the 3-4? McCarthy has ran 3-4 defenses in the past. So I think maybe we'll see some stuff similar. But agreed. I think we think similarly about the D line. Played good. Cam Hayward dominated. If we get another year out of him, even just 80% of what he did this year, that's going to be more than what you expect out of a 37-year-old. He'll be 37 at that time, defensive lineman. I guess Calais Campbell is the only one that comes to mind that has had this type of career, but I don't even know if he was playing to this level. But the second most disappointing position group to me outside of wide receivers were the linebackers. I didn't think Patrick Queen or Peyton Wilson or Cole Holcomb or Malik Harrison played consistently well. I thought they, for large parts of games, were catching versus attacking. We didn't have that dog at linebacker this year. We had spurts. Patrick Queen had games where he looked like he was who we wanted him to be when we signed him. We had Peyton Wilson, that big moment he had against Minnesota, but for large portions of the year, he disappeared. Last year, he was everywhere all the time. We thought coming in this year that he would be an upgrade, and there were times where he was a straight up liability in the run game and had to be subbed out for Cole Holcomb and Malik Harrison. And so the group was a disappointment, and I think that's one of the things that you have to address right away. I gave them a D because I didn't think they played winning football this year, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, this was a group here that, for me, was a little disappointing because I expected to see a little bit more there. But again, some of that rotation up front, did it cause a lack of production in that linebacker group? When you look at the speed of it, they were excited about Peyton Wilson. But like you mentioned, for whatever reason, he fell out of favor with this coaching staff. Or you talk about a Cole Holcomb and Malik Harrison that was playing more snaps to him as the season went on. So something else was going on there. Don't necessarily know if it was an injury or not because it wasn't on the injury report to that particular manner. And again, he was a no-show majority of the season, but he did put up stats. Then that's the same with Patrick Queen there. They had a lot of tackles, but again, was it impactful tackles? Was it tackling, okay, 5, 6 yards down the field, or were there tackle for losses? That just didn't show up consistently enough for me. You did have some splash plays out there where you had a couple of linebackers. Peyton Wilson had an interception. You had um, Nick Herbig had an interception. So you had that. But again, Patrick Queen did not have a interception. In his 2 years that he had in Pittsburgh, he has failed to record an interception. And that's really unheard of when you look at your middle linebackers who have played on a regular basis here in Pittsburgh. If you ask him, he probably said, yeah, I need to do a little bit better that way. But again, numbers wise, when you look at it, that is an issue for me because you did not see those turnovers being created in that particular manner. Love that he wore the green dot this year, got the defense all squared away. But again, there needs to be more there in that group. So this new coaching staff coming in, they're going to look at this group as a whole and look for them to add more pieces to what you're currently seeing.
I would be remiss if I did not bring up the fact that I consider TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith more D line than linebackers. I didn't bring them. We didn't talk about them. So they contributed to that B minus. I gave him, I thought Alex Highsmith had a fantastic year when he was on the field, still dealing with injury issues. Obviously, TJ Watt had a down year, though. This was not the TJ Watt we paid record money to, the type of production we needed from him. I think he only ended up having 7.5 sacks and was largely absent at the end of the year after coming back from his lung issue. And so disappointed, and TJ excited about Alex Highsmith. And then Nick Herbig had his moments, although he didn't get on the field as much as we wanted him to. So wanted to bring them up, didn't want to skirt over them.
And one other person I would add in there too is Jack Sawyer. Jack Sawyer, wonderful
Sawyer,
rookie year that he had, a couple turnovers that he was able to create, and there is a huge upside to what he's bringing to that outside linebacker group as well.
Yep. Glad you brought that up. Going to the secondary, another disappointing group. If not for JPJ. I gave them a C minus. If not for JPJ, this group was teetering on being the worst on the team because there was so much inconsistency. We had so many great moments too. The way that James Pierre played when he finally got the opportunity to play. But going into the season, Darius Slay was supposed to come in and solidify that position. It did not happen. Juan Thorhill was supposed to come in and be a free safety. Did not happen because they were not effective. We had to move Jalen Ramsey and play him in a position we had no plan for him to play going into this year. There was talks of him moving him around, but he was not strictly supposed to be a free safety. That was not the plan. And I thought he got exposed towards the end of the year. So that was a disappointment. Also, you think about Brandon Eccles, who came up and had some good plays, but we traded for Kyle Duggar, came in, played great right away, and then for whatever reason fell off the map as far as what he was doing, like his splash plays, getting beat deep. And ultimately at the end, he wasn't even on the field that much. He got supplanted by Chuck Clark. So all in all, this group was a disappointment. JPJ, pay that man. Pay that man. He played his butt off this year, and he proved that he's one of the elite shutdown corners in this league. But outside of him, it was a disappointing year for the secondary.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you on that. And I think when you look back just at that group, based off what the expectations were coming into this season, the acquisitions that you just mentioned, Darius Slay, Jalen Ramsey, those guys were supposed to now counter the Bengals receivers. And it did not materialize when you have that three-headed monster of Cincinnati, and then ultimately what your secondary looked like at the beginning to the end of the season. And when you look back and you flat out release Darius Slay, you flat out release Juan Thornhill, and then Kyle Duggar, you had Jabril Peppers that were brought in here. All of those guys did not fill the void, and you had to make the move. And unselfishly, Jalen Ramsey did that. Yes, he made the Pro Bowl, could have been based off his reputation, but people know the impact that he's able to provide. So when you're playing out of position, it's easy to point the finger and say, hey, he didn't live up to that. He didn't play that position before. So I'm gonna
Right.
give him a pass off of that because I know the
Mhm.
skills that he's able to come with. Yes, he comes with a high number, but that's because he's a corner. So hopefully you can
Mhm.
put him back into his natural position and pair him back up with that Joey Porter Jr. because that guy has played phenomenal, should have made the Pro Bowl this year, and he should get a nice contract to be able to continue to stay. And that's the beauty of a second round pick versus the first. And I know guys are frustrated when you're not drafted in the first, but now he's first up because he can hit free agency or at least that second contract faster than the first rounder could. So I'm excited about what the future is for him. But when you look at overall from the position, James Pierre, I thought he came on well. That guy
Mhm.
was phenomenal when he had to step onto the field. Brandon Eccles, I think he did solid when he was in the slot position. The one that surprised me is Santi Samuels Jr.,
Oh
who
yeah.
came in, played well throughout. So I think when you look back at just James Pierre, Brandon Eccles, and Asante Samuels, those three right there, they can make this roster. That could be
Mhm.
something that you can live with. Now, what did the back end look like with your secondary guys? You have to now figure out what your safety tandem is going to be. And it wouldn't surprise me if you have two new guys. I know Deshaun Elliott is there. We expect him to come back. But again, if he's able to come back to what we hope he would, because he did get a contract extension before the season, if he can get back to what his play is, pair
Mhm.
him next to somebody that can now make that a strength, not a weakness. Because when Deshaun Elliott went out of the secondary, that secondary became a weakness. So he is the glue back there. So I'm excited to see what Deshaun Elliott brings back to this secondary. But overall, that's all for 26. But this year, this secondary, I give them a C minus because of the expectation we had coming in versus them not reaching that.
Yep. We are aligned on that. Moving on to special teams. I gotta say, the saddest thing outside of Coach Tomlin deciding to step away is the fact that Danny Smith is no longer in Pittsburgh. He went over to Tampa to coach. I mean, my man deserves it. He deserves some warm weather in the twilight of his career. So best of luck to Danny Smith. Heck of a special teams coach. I thought the group played well this year. Not great. I gave him a B because I thought by and large the coverage units did a fantastic job. We didn't get anything in the return game this year. Nothing. But the way that Boswell played, he had another great year. He had a missed extra point. People will highlight and try to frame his whole year after that kick, but no, he was our steady Boswell and Bos we trust. And then I thought Waitman ended up being the right pick at punter. I thought he started out a little shaky, a little inconsistent, but I thought as the year went on, he was very consistent and was a weapon as far as field position goes for our team. So all in all, I gave the special teams a B.
Yeah, we're aligning a lot alike there, and I think ultimately when you look back, at everything that was going on, you gave him a B, I gave him a B minus only because we did not get the production in the return game. We needed to see more. That's where the hidden yardage occurred. We didn't even get that on the punt return game, so that was a reason why I gave them. I said B minus. I gave him B plus. I'm sorry, off
Mhm.
of it. So ultimately B plus because we didn't get the return game in Boswell. If you would have got a little bit of splash plays and then Boswell is the Bos that we're used to seeing on some of
Mhm.
those missed kicks that he had, I would have easily gave them an A. But again, that's going to be a fuel to the fire for someone like Chris Boswell heading into the offseason and say, you want to know what? I got to get back to being that all pro that we know he's capable of being. I'm not worried one bit about Boz on where he needs to get back to. Love where Wakeman is at. This guy, like you mentioned, came on as the season went on. So I think ultimately this is going to be a group that whoever the special teams coach is, they are going to get a chance to inherit a solid group. This is with
Mhm.
anticipation of Miles Killebrew coming back 100% off of his injury because in the words of Mike Tomlin, he said he is the best in the world at what he does. If he can get back healthy, that group is going to be solid. And next year, when we do this evaluation piece, if everybody stays healthy, that is going to be an easy A in this particular department. But again, we don't know who the special teams coach is going to be. We're going to miss Danny Smith. I've known him almost 25 years. This guy was actually the tight end coach when I was in Detroit. That's how
Wow.
far me and Danny Smith go back. Man, I
Mhm.
love him and his family, man. We wish him nothing but the best as he is now taking his wads of bubblegum down to Tampa.
Man, get that man a bubble gum deal. That's gonna be sad not seeing that on the sideline. I always smile, big old smile on my face whenever I saw him with that big old wad, big chew or whatever he's chewing on in there. So, but yeah, when you mentioned Miles Killebrew, I almost forgot. It's going to be exciting to see him and Benny Sko on the special teams unit. That's going to be a formidable duo right there. But moving on to coaching, we did not know this was going to be Coach Tomlin's maiden season. I thought he did a good job. I thought he handled the noise well. I thought he found a way with offensive ranks and defensive ranks being where they were as a team. We didn't deserve, I guess, if you just look at stats, to win the AFC North. We didn't deserve, if you look at our stats, to be a playoff team. This was a very putrid offense, and the defense gave up big plays left and right. They were the bottom third in everything statistically, but Coach Tomlin found a way, like he always has. And so I give him a solid B. I do hold it against him that this defense did not show up. This is a defense that we said was going to be historical in his words, and he paid them like they were going to be historical. Him and obviously Omar and the Rooney's decided that the defense deserved as much money as they got, but they did not perform. They invested and did not get a return on their investment. And so I hold that against a large part of that to Tomlin. That's his thing. But at the end of the day, he found a way to win once again and make it to the playoffs. So a B.
Yeah, this is, tough. Like you said, like you mentioned, nobody expected us to kind of be in this particular situation as we're doing our recap show here. But I think overall, I think the coaching staff, it starts with Tomlin and a lot of the decisions that are being made because he was the one directing the orchestra, essentially. So I think ultimately everything that we're seeing in the vision and with his footprint on this team all went through him. Did he reach that potential? I think he maximized over it. I think he probably did a little bit of over because nobody expected them to win the division. They expect them to compete and maybe be there, but to flat out
Mhm.
win the division, that was impressive only because when you get off to that good start, again, it allows you games toward the end of the season to have, if you lose one or two or whatever, you're still able to now get over that hump. He was able to do that, then ultimately won the division. So for that, I'm giving him a B. But when you look at just the rest of the coaching staff overall, I don't think everybody else elevated their play, and that's where that B minus comes in for me.
Yep. Yeah. All in all, this team gave us heartburn this year, man. It was exciting, but obviously, Coach McCarthy has some things that he's going to have to fill, some gaps, some holes he's going to have to address day one in the job through the draft, through free agency, through training camp and development. And so it's going to be interesting to see what he does. Well, that's it for Steelers football. Let's get on with some actual football that happened. Conference championship games were yesterday. Let's talk about that and the Super Bowl at the end of this break. All right, we have a Super Bowl contest. We know who's going to be playing in it. It will be the Seattle Seahawks versus New England Patriots, a rematch of that famous Super Bowl where they did not hand the ball off to Marshawn Lynch, right? Was that the one where he tried to throw a slant, Russ tried to throw that slant, and Malcolm Butler intercepted it? That was the last time they played in the Super Bowl. So a lot of lives changed that day with that call. And so they had to get there by going through the conference championships. Obviously, New England bested the Denver Broncos in Denver. Some controversy there with Sean Payton and not getting the points, and then a snowstorm coming in and affecting the game from there on out. What did you think about that game? Did you think the better team won? Because I don't.
No, I don't think the better team won, but I think ultimately when you look back and you start questioning decisions, and when you have a quarterback who's making his first start this season, you're going down and trying to figure out. And I was literally watching the game, and I'm sitting there saying, "Take the points." You give him now a 10-point lead, and regardless of what happens on the possession with the Patriots, it doesn't matter because he is now up 10-0. And when he missed it, you failed to convert on fourth down. That came back to bite him. To me, immediately it went back to, it gave me Dan Campbell vibes with the Lions. When he didn't take the points against the 49ers, that came back to bite him, because if he takes the points, Lions are in the Super Bowl, and he did not. Sometimes being over aggressive, coaches got to get out of their own way and look back and figure out what common sense is. He said, "Hey, I was going on momentum." Well, momentum didn't work, and obviously weather changed, and those 3 points costed you at the end.
Do you think conference championship games, should be played in inclement weather? Do you think it should be played indoors? Like when you get to that point, the Final Four, do you agree with playing in, I guess, Buffalo, or in this case, Denver, where there's a chance for inclement weather? Does that matter to you?
It doesn't matter, and that's the beauty of home field. And sometimes you look at that and you say, okay, if a warm weather team is coming into Pittsburgh, you would look back and say, we have the advantage because we live here, and they have to get adjusted to the weather. If that's the case, we wouldn't. Jerome Bettis, Chicago Bears game wouldn't matter. And the beauty of it, when he's running over Brian Urlacher, is the fact that it happened in the snow. That's what makes it more special than what it is, even though it was not a conference championship game. But again, that's why you want the game. Just imagine if the game was either in New England or if Pittsburgh was in it, and Pittsburgh was in it, because now you had to play into a foot of snow. And ultimately, that's up to now the county to make sure that the Department of Transportation is now being able to make sure people can get to the game. And I think ultimately this is what it is. Obviously, it's a small chance, but when you're playing at home, there's a chance that you have to take, especially when you're playing in Denver.
Man, this feels like perhaps the easiest path for the Patriots. They found a way. The ball found a way to work in their favor, because I don't think they play particularly well these playoffs. I don't think Drake May has played well, but they went against a Houston team where that defense was all world, but CJ Stroud gave them the ball 5 or 6 times. And then they're going against a Denver team who didn't have their starting quarterback in the conference championship. So the ball just rolls in the favor of some teams sometimes. It seems to happen very often for the Patriots.
But you do, one of the formulas that you have to have is a little luck on your side.
Yeah.
And you only can play what's on your schedule. And
They got a lot of luck.
unfortunately, for the Broncos, it happened their way, but the Patriots, they were fortunate to be able to now have this path. And when you talk about one game, that the hardest game that you have at this particular point, maybe over a 2-month stretch, They now, if they play the best 60 minutes, no one cares whether the path that they took. They went out there and handled their business. And hopefully, if they're able to hoist that Lombardi trophy, they'll say, who cares?
Oh, we don't want that. We don't want them getting number 7, CB. All right. They need to stay at 6 with us until we can get to number 7. So I'm gonna be rooting for the Seahawks. Don't get it twisted. They need to get their revenge. Right?
Yeah, it's gonna be tough. I'm right on the fence right there with you on it, right? So, give me a little bit more time, at least another week
Mhm.
before we actually have to do our Super Bowl picks.
Okay. I'll give you a little bit more time. Let it set in. But Seahawks had to go against a division rival to get for their path to the Super Bowl. The AFC West was strong this year. 3 teams made it to the playoffs. San Fran won. Every NFC West team won a playoff game. And so that was pretty impressive. And the Seahawks, man, they look dominant. And I got to tell you this, I was concerned. I didn't know if Darnold was going to show up for the big game, and he shut everybody up. He balled out, and it was because of him that they won. And so a lot of crazy stuff happened. The, the taunting penalty that I didn't think should have been called is so inconsistently called by referees, but ended up not mattering in the long scheme. But yeah, I thought Seattle, who's been playing lights out the entire year, looked like the best team the entire year, went against a team that they have troubles with. Sean McVay usually does really well against Seattle, but playing in Seattle is a whole different beast. And I thought Darnold showed up in a big way.
No, he did, and I think ultimately that was the biggest question because everybody remembers what happened last year when he was with Minnesota. And to get back to this point and redeem yourself, and all you're asking as a quarterback or any player is another opportunity. And here he was now moving on, especially when the Vikings gave up, didn't want to offer him a contract. You move on to Seattle, and now everybody who made that decision is right, including Sam Darnold, by selecting Seattle to say, I want to join your organization because y'all believe and what I'm bringing to the table. And now here they are playing in the Super Bowl. As that game unfolded back and forth, again, Sean McVay, as bright, talented coach that he is, I question what he did with 4 minutes in the game where he could have kicked the field goal, made it a 1 point ball game, and then go ahead and kick it deep and now force Seattle to now drive and bleed out that clock. What happened? You don't take the points. And then all of a sudden, here you are with 25 seconds with no timeouts, having to now go down the field for a potential Hail Mary. Who knows what happened if Puka is able to get out of bounds. And now here you are sitting potentially in field goal range right at the end of the game. So again, a lot of it plays out. And I'm sure Sean McVay is questioning himself and wondering, like, dang, how would the things played out if I took the points and
Mhm.
then ultimately now have to play defense and see how it unfolds. So again, it's a tough one, but I'm happy for Sam Darnold because again, he gets a chance to right the ship, and he is one of those guys as a first round draft pick of the Jets, and then ultimately moving on different teams and ending up in this position. It is great to see him in this position.
There seems to be a coaching epidemic. Does it not taking the points? Everybody wants to go for it on 4th down. It seems like Dan Campbell has infected the entire league because it seems to be happening even with coaches who traditionally do it and then take the points. It seems to be happening. It happened with Sean McVay. It happened with Sean Payton. So go figure.
Sometimes common sense has to overplay ego, and they're going to turn around all offseason kicking themselves about a questionable call that ultimately determined the game.
Well, CB, common sense ain't common no more, unfortunately. So moving on, we still got some FanDuel bets. We're gonna wait off until next week to do our Super Bowl bets. We're gonna get those in as we get closer to the game. But at the end of this break, I'm gonna ask you who your offense player of the year is, defensive player of the year is, and comeback player of the year. We'll be back. Big play bets are brought to you by FanDuel. You know how fast NFL game days move. One big play and everything changes. That's why live betting on FanDuel is a game changer. With FanDuel, you can bet in real time while the game unfolds. Score just flipped, jump on a new spread or live money line. That wide receiver is heating up, bet the next touchdown score or total yards. Think that drive stalls in the red zone? Take a live field goal prop or fade the total. Live player props, team totals, drive results, updated spreads, next play markets, it's all there. It's fast, it's fun, and with FanDuel, your live bets move as quickly as the game does. So whether you're riding momentum or fading the hype, FanDuel puts you right in the middle of every moment. Visit FanDuel.com/bigplay to download the app and bet the NFL live all season long. Disclaimer must be 21 plus and present in select states for Kansas in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino or 18 plus and present in DC, Kentucky, or Wyoming. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit rg/help.com. All right. The season awards are coming up here soon. They usually have that award show just before the Super Bowl. So we'll find out who our MVP is. You said Stafford last week was your MVP. I'm going to tend to agree with you on that. But let's talk about Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, and Comeback Player of the Year. I'll give you mine first. For Offensive Player of the Year, I thought JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba in Seattle balled out. He almost had a chance to get the triple crown, but I thought with DK leaving and him being number one on the team for his first year, he absolutely tore the league up. Him and Darnold have a budding relationship connection that could be one of the top connections in the league for the next 5 to 7 years if everybody stays healthy. So I got JSN as my offensive player of the year.
Offensive player of the year for me, I'm going to Christian McCaffrey. And
Mm.
I just think the season that he had, this guy's an unbelievable player. He's still doing it at a high level at his age. And ultimately, and I say at his age because when running backs get up there and they start to get phased out when they enter 30, but this
Mhm.
guy's still showing that he has a production, and I'm just happy to see where he's at. Hopefully he gets the nod for offensive player of the year.
Yeah, CMC is a good candidate. You got some other candidates like Puka Nakua, Jonathan Taylor in Indy, James Cook in Buffalo. So lots of options for that award. But moving on, Defensive Player of the Year. I know everybody thinks it is, but my Defensive Player of the Year is Will Anderson from the Houston Texans, the best player on the best defense in the league. I think the Defensive Player of the Year actually has to win games. I don't care if you break records. You got to win games. It has to have meaningful impact. And so I know our producers over there, Ryan's like, whatever. Yeah, Ryan, I'm not picking your boy. I'm picking Will Anderson. All right, who you got, CB?
Yeah, I agree with you on with the thought process there, and this
Mhm.
kind of reminds me of the Pro Bowl, right? It's like sometimes players who you think should have made the Pro Bowl, but yet the name recognizable guy makes it, and then all of a sudden that guy makes it the following year. This is exactly where he's at on the pecking chart. But you got to go with the obvious. It's going to be Miles Garrett only because he broke the sack record that has stood for so long. And I know their PR producer is sitting there smiling right now with a grin on his face, ear to ear. But ultimately, I just think where he's at, and based off the team that he is playing with, yes, the production is there, but he's not winning games. Do I feel sorry for him? No. Why? Because at the beginning of the season, I stated I don't want to hear about you complaining right now about the lack of winning games. Because when you asked for a trade, you said I want to now winning is important and I want to move on. And that was until they showed him the money. They showed him the money. He responded back with a monster season on what he had. He should win the defensive player of the year. But ultimately, brother, you are stuck over the next 3 to 4 years with this Cleveland Browns team as every head coach is turning you down because they don't even want to take the interview for Cleveland. So they're seeing something that you didn't see when you signed your contract, but ultimately you produced well deserved. And I am a big fan of Miles Garrett as he is now going to hoist that second defensive MVP.
Hey, man, the future's bright in Cleveland. They got a Pro Bowl quarterback, right?
Yes, they do.
Shador
Absolutely. I was
Sanders
just enough.
just got selected to the Pro Bowl. So nobody should can be complaining in Cleveland. They got a Defensive Player of the Year candidate and a Pro Bowler. The future's bright in Cleveland. Moving on. Comeback Player of the Year is your Offense Player of the Year. CMC. I got him coming off injury and having a year that he had this year. Over 1,000 yards of rushing, over 1,000 yards of receiving, a crazy amount of catches, a crazy amount of usage. For him to be able to maintain that and stay healthy, and for San Fran to absolutely lean on him after coming off injury, I thought it was just a testament to his will and his work ethic. But I have him as my comeback player of the year.
Yeah, and a lot of it, I don't know, what falls into comeback player of the year. I don't know if you have to come back from an injury, maybe a lackluster season a year before, and then ultimately you responded with the monster year. For me,
Mm.
I'm going down in Dallas, and it's easy to select Dak because of the season that he had. I know he came off an injury, but the reason why you had the monster season was because of George Pickens. This
Mhm.
guy, He was left for dead in Pittsburgh. They traded him. They paired him with the worst coordinator in the history of the NFL in Matt Canada. I'm not throwing shade. The numbers are what they are. And this is the memories that we have of George Pickens in Pittsburgh. You move him into Dallas and put him into a passing offense, and this guy responded. He almost had more yards by himself than what the Steelers receiver group had as a whole. That lets you know the talent that you let out the door, which you ultimately could have held him on for one season, but it didn't happen. He went to Dallas, responded in a big way. He is going to get rewarded with that contract wise, whether it's in Dallas or not. But this guy showed the league who he truly was. And I'm going with George Pickens as my comeback player of the year.
All right. Fans of the Snap Count, go to FanDuel, put in your bets on season awards. I have JSN, Will Anderson, who I know is not going to win. It's going to be Myles Garrett, but it's still Will Anderson, and CMC. And CB, you have CMC, Myles Garrett, and George Pickens. So you can bet on that on FanDuel. Go to season awards and put in your bets. Brother, I will see you next week. We will talk about the Super Bowl and what Steelers have in store with Mike McCarthy. What is the plan? So let's do it. Here we go.
Let's do it. Looking forward to it.